The Denver Nuggets need some energy. So today, we're talking motor. What is the key to revving this basketball engine? Then, we got to talk about the NBA playoffs. A sweep on one side, a game 7 on the other, but who will walk away with the title? Stay tuned to find out. Welcome to What's in a Game. I'm Grace Jean here with my co-host Will Jones. How are you doing today, Will?
Doing fine. Spurs Thunder game 7, which means the Thunder have a possibility to lose. The backlash against the Thunder is strong,
It's
as the chat's
hilarious.
pointing out.
Did we talk last week at all about how much everybody seems to hate the Thunder? Not like, hang on. We know everybody hates the Thunder. Like that's not even like a thing that's new to this season. But it's like it's honestly reached a fever pitch.
Mm-hmm.
Like I saw this great this great meme the other day where someone was like, it was like an announcer quote. It's like, and it's OKC versus the Ku Klux Klan. And then it was like NBA Twitter : and it's just like a Ku Klux Klan like bonfire.
Yeah.
And I think it's like it's fascinating. It's fascinating as somebody, frankly, who like, I mean, I hate the Thunder. I have a great reason to hate the Thunder. Like they're in our division. We hate them. We've played them. We play them so often. Blah blah blah. But it seems like it's literally everyone.
Yeah.
Including maybe like sources that you would expect to try to like feign objectivity a little bit more outwardly, at least.
Yeah. There's still some people who are doing that. I don't think they're like faking it. I think they actually kind of think that way, where they're trying to play the middle ground, like Jason Timpf, and like legs went to bat.
I mean,
for them.
He has a pretty good reason to hate them too. Like his team, the Lakers, just played them and got swept and blah blah blah. But I'm talking about like more. Well, I mean, I guess Jason also covers like national NBA whatevers, but kind of people from like mainstream outlets that you like wouldn't expect to be as like leaning into the flopping narrative and even like mining data sets on like how many times Shea falls compared
I love
to
that.
It was just like, wow, this is like a lot.
I know.
You know, the thing that it reminds me of is that like I'm kind of taken aback by it a little bit, because to a degree it reminds me of like a Jokic. It's like the volume is at it, not in terms of like amount, but I mean like the pitch is like, if you were on one side of like a Jokic versus like Embiid or Jokic versus SGA MVP like narrative race, and you were like not just like a national figure like staking a claim in this race, but if you were part of the fan base. And it's like, I don't understand why some of these people feel this invested in it. And I'm not saying it's like bad to be. It's just like I'm taken aback by it because it doesn't seem like everybody who is like, I guess, chiming in to the degree that they are has like the same emotional stake that I would sort of expect from somebody that is like espousing some of this stuff. You know what I mean? It's like it's very partisan in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it is. I was enjoying the Thunder and Lakers series because the Lakers have so many fans around the country, let alone the world. And that is just going to put a spotlight on the Thunder discourse even more.
You think the Lakers series is like what kind of elevated it even more? Because it's been kind of building all season, but I really do feel like it did sort of like break through last round.
Yeah, like, I think it started a bit there.
That's when I started seeing people being like, wow, I'm like annoyed that the Lakers aren't getting more free. Like that kind of thing. Like non-Lakers people being like, I'm taking the Lakers side in a battle about like free throws and flopping and blah, blah, blah. Which is like, whoa, like that's when you know it's bad kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Poppins brought up the fact that it was the same thing when the Nuggets played them. Dahlia's bringing up whether them playing Wemby is amplifying these critiques. And I think there's some to all of that. Obviously, Poppins right.
The
Like
media
the nut,
are very protective of Wemby. That's
yeah,
been true since his rookie season. Yeah.
So Nuggets fans have been on this about the Thunder for the last 2 seasons. Like I think a lot of the teams in the West who are playing the Thunder and see themselves as a contender, no matter that the Nuggets just went out in the first round. We're kind of used to it, but like when you're playing the Lakers and you're playing Wemby, who just like you said, he's being super coddled by the media because he's the new darling of the NBA, and the coach of the Spurs after those games was talking about, Wemby, well, even in the Wolves series, Wemby needing to protect himself against contact. And it's his first playoff series, like playoff run.
Was he really saying that? I haven't watched any of.
Yeah, like
don't even know what Mitch Johnson sounds like now that I think about it. I don't think I ever watched the first game.
After Wemby elbowed Nas, he was like, well, when, the team's playing that physical, you're going to have to defend yourself at some point. And I was like, this is like his second series. It's not like Jokic where he's getting beat up and grabbed and scratched for multiple playoff series in a row. And Jokic isn't out there like punching people, but it was like, maybe he should now. Like they're setting the precedent to fight back against this shit.
I will say I was one of the people that said that shouldn't have been an ejectable call. Like fine, call it a flagrant, whatever. I wouldn't have given it a flagrant 2.
I definitely would.
It looks way worse on slow motion than it did in real time.
I'm leaning into the Wemby villain arc where I'm like, he's cheap shotting people. He's not showing up talking to the media after losses.
Yeah. You know who else didn't do that yesterday? Caitlin Clark after losing to the Valkyries.
Well, I mean, it's a regular season game. Come on.
Yeah, and she had like maybe her worst game of her career.
Yeah.
So just saying.
Yeah, so I think it's all those things. But yeah, it's interesting. And I do think part of it is Wemby. And I don't know. I'll be happy. It's hard for me. I want both teams to lose so bad. So while I would be happier if OKC lost.
I'm fully in on the Knicks, by the way.
Oh yeah, me
Not
too.
that I'm gonna say they're gonna win, but like I'm rooting for them. Just because it would break so many narrative brains. We'll get to it when we get to the playoff section, but like I'm with you. Like I don't actually care which of these teams like makes it, but I want the Knicks to beat them in the finals.
Yeah, I originally thought the Nuggets were going to be the only team that could save us from either Spurs or Thunder winning, and now it's up to the Knicks. And they swept in the other series going to 7 games, which I guess is like the best case scenario if they're going to have any shot at all. So we'll see.
Yeah. But on the we'll talk about this stuff a little bit more when we get to the playoff section. Before we jump into a couple news items, please do us a favor, hit the like and subscribe buttons. First piece of news is pretty big. I can't remember if this was yesterday morning or the day before. But news broke on ESPN that Terry Rozier has been charged with accepting a $100,000 bribe to manipulate his performance when he was with the Hornets. And we'll get to the specifics right here. This is quoting from the ESPN article on these charges. Quote, the indictment alleges Rozier planned to use a leg injury that he suffered late in 22-23 as a reason to withdraw himself from an upcoming Hornets game in exchange for the $100,000 bribe. So this is, again, when Terry was back on the Hornets. Rozier allegedly informed co-defendant De Niro Laster that he would remove himself from a March 2023 game against the New Orleans Pelicans due to the injury. Laster shared the information with multiple bettors who then placed more than almost $260,000 in wagers on the under on Rozier's various statistics, according to the indictment per ESPN. Important to note that Rozier, and his attorney has said that he denies these allegations because obviously, right? And in this country, you're innocent until proven guilty. I will say these are very specific allegations. Even I should say the specific dollar amounts on the bets on the multiple bettors. I should say I said almost $260,000. They said they placed more than $258,700 in wagers on his unders on that game. That's insane to have like a betting ring of like a few people placing over $250,000 of bets on Terry Rozier unders in a Hornet. I'm kind of surprised, honestly, because like, I don't know, the checks and the sensors that these like various betting websites do didn't catch us at the time, because that's just on its face sounds really suspicious to me. So interesting that wasn't flagged. GP of St. John says, is this league rigged? Well, every market is structured, GP. That's what CBAs are. I mean, every sports league is a cartel, right? And the question is like, what are the trade-offs that the cartel is making? How transparent do they purport to be? How transparent are they actually? Right? But that's a bigger philosophical question for a deeper off-season show. Prometheus Hoop says, this is dumber than the Jonte Porter one somehow. That's a great question. Like, which one is dumber? So Jonte was a two-way player. Like, I think that's just way dumber because it's like not. Terry was, I forget if he was a starter on the Hornets still at that point. He might have been still a starter just because of their injuries, and at some point transitioned to six man before he was traded to the Heat. But he's a starter on like an NBA team. When you start making bets on two-way players unders, like that's way easier to flag. And it was not $250,000 if I recall in the Jonte Porter case, but it was still a lot of money. Like it's on that order of magnitude almost. It was at least 80,000 and like verging on over $100,000 of bets on two-way players. You know, what are they called with prop bets, right? Prop betting is when you're betting on like specific statistics on a player. I should note that this is part of that larger NBA gambling probe that the FBI kind of opened into, and I forget if we covered like the bigger story on the show, but we definitely talked about like the fact of why Chauncey Billups is not the Portland Trail Blazers head coach right now, is he was kind of swept up in this, and he's been implicated in this probe, and I believe he was charged as well because he was charged in the release with like being part of this sort of information sharing ring. It feels like from what I'd read, like the case with Chauncey is like maybe a little bit flimsier, but I guess we'll see as this kind of goes on.
Well, he's not coaching.
He's not coaching now, but he was. And it was about like information sharing, basically, just like here, where like the part that was bad was that one, that he's like potentially like using an injury to like excuse himself from a game. So that's bad. But two, that he informed this guy who informed other bettors as well. It's basically like insider trading is like the kind of equivalent that we're talking about here. Right. So that's kind of where they're trying to get Chauncey to. So I think that's kind of interesting. Obviously, both people deny all of the allegations against them, and it's a little bit difficult to prove. This one might be a little bit easier to prove because there are probably text messages that we're talking about in this instance, which would make things difficult. I don't remember if we covered this angle of it, but obviously Terry Rozier, he was actually investigated by the NBA back when he was on the Hornets. They didn't find anything. I don't know if the case was actually ever closed. But the fact that he was being investigated for like similar, like related things having to do with this gambling stuff, and not necessarily this bribe or this particular instance, but like he had been flagged. I mean, I guess maybe this had been flagged because like the NBA had opened an investigation into him when he was still on the Hornets. Nothing came of that particular investigation. And then the Heat traded a first round pick for him. And there was, when these allegations, and now these, I'm sure it's going to be renewed with these charges that have been dropped on Terry, the Heat being quite upset that the league hid the fact that he was being investigated from them because it might have impacted whether they would have traded for him in the first place, Or if not that, like maybe they wouldn't have given up their like the first round pick that they did give to the Hornets in that trade. Um, from the league's perspective, you can also understand like, look, like we didn't find anything in our investigation. You don't want to like tank a player's, reputation, career, potential trade value, because then you could piss off the Hornets if nothing like actually comes of that. But yeah, it's a sticky situation with all of these uh really sticky gambling cases involving players that are basically trading on inside information, allegedly. Not just because of the player and the people that bet on them that didn't have the inside information, but also because of like what it means for their teams as well, and obviously for the fans. I actually want to read a tweet that I saw from a Hornets beat writer, and actually now that I think of it, I think he actually might host. No, he hasn't. I think he doesn't host Locked on Hornets, but I think he's like been on an episode. Um, but I read this tweet from him this morning. It said, "I'm still stunned by Terry Rozier's actions. He convinced teammates, fans, and the media that he was a respected veteran leader. None of it meaningfully changed the franchise, but risking your reputation that recklessly for money reeks of arrogance and a belief you'd never get caught." And I have to say, like, I think it's insane to do this for $100,000. Like, Terry was on a multi $10 million contract. I think he was making over 20 million at that point. Actually, he might still be. I'm just gonna see. Why are you risking everything for $100,000 bribe? And maybe they're gonna find more money in this investigation, and this was like what they could prove or what they think they can prove, and that's why this is what is being alleged right now. But I think it's just honestly insane. It makes a lot more sense. Maybe that's what Prometheus is it Prometheus Rising was saying, is like this is dumber from Terry's perspective than Jonte, because at least Jonte, it's like, I mean, I'm not going to be making that much more money in my career. I might not even be on a roster in a few months, even if this wasn't found out.
That's was my first perspective. Was Jonte is kind of a nobody, so he's just trying to get money based on his position. But like you said, easier to notice something like that, whereas people could bet on a starter like Rozier, not necessarily flag anything. But also he has a more solid position, so why is he risking it?
Exactly. So just really, really dumb stuff. I think this past season was the last year of Terry's. Oh, I forgot he got waived. Yeah, he was making $26.6 million. Like, what are you doing, man? And obviously more money could have been involved, but I just think it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to go on to a completely different topic because we don't have to discuss it that much, but there was the whole SGA Underdog thing where he sent them the cease and desist because they were using the AI video to do the campaign to, they like had some operation based SGA. I
didn't realize there was AI involved. So,
yeah, they were selling
Sports receives a cease and desist letter regarding a promotion that made fun of Shai Alexander's efforts to draw fouls. So this promotion involved AI. I just saw the news piece. I don't think I'd ever seen the actual Underdog.
Yeah, well, there was a video that was like promoting it, like a trailer that was like 100% AI generated.
Okay.
But then they also had the product that they were putting out that I assumed might have been AI in its design as well. I don't know for sure on that one, but that's what I had more of a problem with. But I don't know. I saw a lot of people saying like, oh, they're using his name and likeness to profit off of, which is definitely like questionable. I wouldn't care that as much.
Now that I wonder what some of the rules are on that, because now that I think about it, most of the posts from these like Underdog, FanDuel, like Kalshi, like the prediction markets too, Kalshi and like Polymarket, whatever. Does Polymarket do sports, or do they have like a sports arm? Probably, whatever. I don't usually see images in those posts, even though those are the kinds of posts that tend to go like more viral and stuff. And I wonder if that's part of it, is actually like you're not supposed to do that.
I know. I was instantly thinking about that. Like all the gambling entities and posts and advertisements, how much were they using actual images from the sport itself? And the players? And I was like, I actually don't know, because I don't pay that much attention to it. But I just think it's funny, people kind of being up in arms about gambling and these companies trying to make money off of it, when the NBA like fully like enables this themselves by taking these sponsorships
and the players
and making part of the tanking fixes that they're proposing are because they're worried about these players going out in the middle of the games and kind of screwing up markets and stuff too. So it's like, I don't know. The NBA is profiting off gambling. Everyone's profiting off gambling. So I don't know. It just seems a little bit hypocritical, I guess, with regards to that. But just don't use AI to make fun of Shea. Otherwise, I support any of the messaging to talk about Shea.
Yes. I guess we'll, continue to follow this entire gambling probe. We'll, whenever there's a big update on that, we'll keep talking about it, because I think it could be, a really important story for the league, especially like I would like to know, and I would have wanted to know a year ago, like, okay, what exactly did the NBA do to investigate this back when they had initially opened their own internal case on Terry Rozier, that they didn't find anything, but the FBI has been, they've been working this case for a while, and they didn't bring allegations down until now, but they found a lot about this ring, and Terry was implicated potentially in stuff kind of marginally well before these allegations came out. Like, we knew it was like, okay, Chauncey, Malik Beasley, more like separately, but like Chauncey and Terry were kind of mentioned in like similar portions of some of the initial documentation that came out, to make me think like, okay, did the NBA actually investigate when this came up, And again, like, there's more than just bettors as interested parties in this, because the teams would want to know that the players that they have like are, have like integrity or whatever. And the teams that are potentially trading for these players would want to know too. So not only did they, not find stuff that seemed to be like, I don't know, how hard would it have been for the NBA to get to this information? Maybe very difficult, because they don't have subpoena power like the DOJ does. But also that they kept the fact of the investigation hidden from, a potential trade partner. Pat Riley's probably pissed off about that. Johnny Keene says that is definitely the end of his NBA career. I don't know. We'll see what comes of it, because I'm sure Malik Beasley is going to try to make a comeback, since he's like he hasn't been cleared, but like they haven't actually thrown anything at him. And it seems like maybe his stuff was like, he was just kind of like caught in.
Mm-hmm.
He was just like bad for a few games. Yeah. All right.
Well, let's talk about the next big change for the NBA.
We'll talk about other ways that the NBA is trying to, I don't know, bow down to the gambling companies. The NBA has implemented this 3-2-1 lottery scheme as an anti-tanking measure. Will, if you could bring up the graphic on that the NBA PR put out yesterday. So in this record here, the way that this works is they expand the lottery to 16 teams. It's currently only 15, right? Yeah. And the way that it works is they've flattened out the lottery odds. So it's no longer like super staggered, and I'll get to another graphic on this, but the teams with the 3 worst records get 3 lottery balls. The remaining non-play-in teams also get 3 lottery balls, and the 9 and 10 play-in seeds get 2, and then the additional team that was added to the lottery is going to be the loser of the 7-8 play-in game. They'll get a lottery ball too. So you could potentially have had like under this new system, like the Phoenix Suns potentially could have gotten like the number 1 overall pick, even though they were like a mid-tier team. But if they got eliminated in the play-in, they have a chance, right? There is a floor. So the 3 worst teams will now, like, you can't fall to the absolute back of the lottery. I guess you couldn't fall to the back of the lottery anyway, because you could only fall 4 places, but you get more punishment if you're a bottom 3 team, because you could be relegated to the 12th spot. Right now, okay, maybe you don't win the draft lottery, maybe you don't get in the top 4, but if you have the worst record, then you slot in at number 5, right? Now, you could fall all the way down to 12 potentially. Right? Is that like how this relegation system works? I'm still trying to work out some of the details, but that's my understanding of it. There's also some restrictions on teams that are bad for too many years in a row. For example, you can't receive the number 1 pick 2 consecutive years. I don't think we've had a team do that. Get the number 1 pick in 2 consecutive
years. No.
Has that ever happened? Like, not even just in recent memory? But I'm sure, like, I'm good with having that in there.
Yeah.
Just as like
some of the restrictions
we don't want this
I'm
to happen.
fine with.
Yeah. And you can't receive a top 5 pick in 3 consecutive years. So I think that would actually have hurt maybe the Spurs. No, because they got Wemby, Skip, Castle, and then no, wait, it was Wemby, Castle, Harper, no?
Yeah. I think the Spurs had 3 top 5 picks in a row.
Because Wemby was 2023.
I mean, a lot of people are saying that a lot of these restrictions are a direct reaction to the Spurs.
Yeah. Oh, of course. You first... It's hilarious because this happens right after, Sam Presti goes around complaining about how the Utah Jazz are openly tanking when they own the Jazz's top 8 protected pick. And it's like, yeah, of course they're tanking. They want to keep their first round pick from you, and they suck. They don't want to give up a first round pick. And then all of these reforms get pushed through in a matter of months. And then some of them are in direct response to the Spurs. And it's like, what are we doing in response to the Thunder? Are we going to change anything about the way that the CBA is structured? The way that, these teams are like hoarding draft picks and taking advantage of executives who get fired like the next year after they do business with you.
Okay, well, really quick.
Yeah.
There have been some teams that have had the number 1 pick in consecutive years, which was the Rockets in the 80s, who got Ralph Sampson, and the next year got Hakeem Olajuwon. And then the Magic in the 90s, who did Shaq, and then followed that up with Chris Webber.
Oh, okay. Chris Webber was the number 1 pick.
And I think the Cavs and maybe the Sixers did it at one point too. Ben Simmons and Markelle Fultz, and then Anthony Bennett.
Oh, the Sixers Wiggins. Definitely did. Yeah.
So,
what did the Cavs get?
It was Andrew Wiggins and someone else.
And whoever. Okay, whatever. Yeah. But yeah, I'm fine having that in there. Just they're trying to remove the incentive. I don't want the extreme case to happen. They're trying to remove the incentive to like tank to be like the absolute worst record and have like the best lottery odds. I would like to remove the possibility of the extreme case of like a good team or like a mid-tier team like winning the lottery 2 years in a row.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it is trying to prevent OKC, even though it's not like, I can't remember. Do the restrictions say something about multiple top 5 picks in consecutive years? Can't receive.
Yes, you can't receive top 5 pick in 3 consecutive years. So like the Spurs could have gotten Wemby and Castle, but not Harper.
Yeah, but I think that's also Thunder-esque because of well, maybe they
I don't
um
think they've gotten a Chet's the only top 5 pick they've gotten in the last
yeah, they just got
few
Jadab
years.
at 12.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
obviously Shea was via trade. Kaysen was at like 15.
Yeah, they were still pretty high up, which is why I am worried about some of these because of like the jumble in the middle, because like the bottom three are getting like worse odds. And then there's like this big group, which will show in this other graph, that I'm like, okay, you have these mid teams now who could what if they got the first pick in one year, and then the next year they're like in the 8, 7, 9, 10 range. They just got a first pick. They pick it like 9, and they're like stacked again. That's like just like what the Thunder did. I don't know.
Yep.
So I guess we
Hey,
can't rule
like
out a Thunder. The thing
right.
about the
So like
Thunder is, yeah,
the
you
go
got to get
ahead.
lucky with an MVP level player that you just get out of nowhere. But,
Yeah. I will say to your point though, there are like particular spots in the standings that I think are going to be really like not squeezed, but it's going to be highly unfavorable to stay there cuz now they've kind of incentivized being a 7 or 8 seed and maybe losing that play-in game because you don't want to be the one that wins and then just gets smacked by the 1 seed, or I guess the 2 seed. Um, although some of these like 7 or 8 seeds win those games, win those series. Very few, but um, the 6 seed gets absolutely nothing. You get no home court. You get no chance at the lottery. Blah blah blah. And when you think about it, and this is something that I um have been wondering about with this new system is like you've kind of created more like marginal incentives at other parts of the standings now to where like if you're in the 7 or 8 and you don't think you're going to win your playing game anyway, like how much worse is like the 9 or 10 seed than 7 or 8? And then there it doesn't matter if you win your play-in game or not. Like you could potentially be, it seems like the 9th and 10th play-in seed. You get 2 lottery balls and you can still make the playoffs if you win those 2 games and then uh do that whole song and
oh,
dance,
it
which is like
preserves your like spot for the
that's
odds.
what it seems like from this graphic because it says 9th and 10th play-in seeds.
Hmm. Interesting. Because I thought it would be
Maybe
like
that's
washed out
based
if you made the
on
playoffs.
the way that they do it now where it's like if you make the playoffs like you get bumped.
Yeah.
But now there's not as much difference between being a 7-8 and being a 9-10 in terms of the incentives. There is still difference, right? You want to have just one game to be able to make the playoffs instead of having to play 2, and potentially 2 on the road if you're a 10 seed. Uh but it's like, well, I don't know. Like it's a little bit less now, it's less painful to be a 9 or 10 seed over a 7-8 to where it's like, the question isn't whether teams will still like try in these instances. I think they will. And obviously the players like don't care about like draft lottery stuff. Like so if they're on the floor, it's it is what it is. Um it's just okay, we're just like shifting the incentive slightly and I just wonder if that changes behavior on the margins at some of these like middle kind of mid teams or like a team that has a mid season just to say like I mean maybe you have a bad season. Let's say Denver's like, man, not a great year. We fall to the 6th seed. Is it that much better to make the play in and then or not even make the plan because you can still be a 7 or 8 seed and get at least one lottery ball, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because the loser of the 7-8 gets one. I'm just saying. All right. So this is a nice representation of how the lottery odds have changed under this new system. This is a graphic by Levakabas on Twitter. Old odds. You see the top top three with the best odds were the worst three teams in the league, and then everything is staggered from there down to 14th. Let's see, 14, 15, yeah. And with the new odds, the worst three teams in the league have actually like some of the worst odds at the at like top picks as the as like the entire lottery. And actually where you want to be is like, we're not the worst team in the league. We still suck, but we're not the worst team in the league. This is like a dream for the Chicago Bulls, honestly, when you look at it, because they're like, well, wow, we'll finally have like 10% odds if we keep being like the 10th worst team in the league every single year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think I'm just annoyed with the discourse of, the Western Conference Finals that we were talking about, the like officiating, and Adam Silver coming out saying he thinks the refs have been doing a great job and that flopping's not an issue and all this stuff, and how the refs aren't fooled. And, we've talked about the schedule being insane and injuries going up. And it just seems like they don't care about competitive viability and really increasing the quality of play and maximizing that competitive aspect game to game. And then at the same time, they're doing this tanking stuff to make it seem like, they don't want players resting and players coming out in the middle of the games, and, this tanking problem just doesn't seem to like fit with the ethos of what the NBA has kind of been putting out with their messaging, especially. So like they're going to have a couple teams really not trying to get at the bottom. That's like good enough for them.
Yeah, so I just wrote out like the kind of what are the three like things you're trying to figure out with these new tanking rules. Is one, will they work? Will the weakest teams in the league stop actively making themselves even worse in terms of their record with sketchy injury designations and sus late game planning? I see you, Will Hardy. You might be the best at it. Maybe the GOAT of throwing games. I think that this on this front, like they will be effective, because now it's like, I don't want to be the worst team in the league. I want to be like slightly better than that. And actually those teams will have to be competitive against each other to stay out of that bottom three, because actually you don't like those teams have the worst lottery odds, right?
Yeah, like the bottom tier tanking will be fixed, but it's going to create some issues.
Potential perverse incentives higher up the ladder. We'll see. It's gonna be really annoying because now like those games won't necessarily be freebies anymore for like the good teams, and maybe we just end up like hockey, where it's like, what are the records? Why is everybody so like lumped together? Part of it's because of the way they assign their points with overtime losses, but
well, it'll feel better for me because a team won't just beat us while they're actually supposed to be tanking. It makes it feel even worse.
Right.
Because we just lose to teams. It's like, you should be losing. What are you doing? Now it'll make sense when they beat us.
Next is, were they necessary? And this is kind of to your point. Lev actually has a great thread of charts addressing the stated justification that the NBA was trying to use to address this tanking. And I included my favorite here. If you could bring up the tanking divide graphic. Again, from Levakabas, just put up the point differential. You can liken that to net rating of all the teams late in the year. And he just saw that there was a giant gap between the teams that were on the verge of making the playoffs potentially, and except the Pelicans, who like thought they were making a late playoff push, but good on them for trying. And all the teams that were probably not going to make the playoffs plus the Warriors, for some reason, they were just really bad at the end of the season. And those are teams that were actively tanking, except the Bulls were not actively tanking, and they were just really, really bad last year. So the argument that Love is trying to make here is that the gap between tanking teams and non-tanking teams was bigger than ever this year. I'd actually be curious to see what this would look like in years where the draft isn't as deep. Like the draft is very highly sort of revered this season, but what did this look like, this same chart look like in like 2024? The draft that had like Zachary Risachet and Alex Starr at the top, and then mostly a bunch of role players. Like I think a lot of teams were trying to trade out of those picks. In that
there's a lot
draft,
of talk about that,
right? And I wonder if it was just like, guys, we like kind of overreacted to like a year where everybody was tanking because there was a generational draft. I would have liked to see what it looked like in 2023, the year that Wemby was going to be in the draft lottery and or in the draft, and not just him. Like that was a deep draft, not just one that was known to be, not just because Wemby was at the top either. You had Wemby, you had Lively, you had Cason Wallace, you had not Andrew Nembhard in that one. You had Tamati Kamara at 52nd in that draft.
Yeah.
Right. Let's see. There were a lot of guys that I was interested in for Denver in that draft. You had Jarris Walker, who's like had taken a few years to come online, but now he's looking like he's going to be pretty good for Indiana once like Hallie comes back, kind of thing. But you had like a pretty rich draft, and it was also known to be a rich draft. That was a really that was the year that the Rockets were like disgusting, and Denver, had that awful game to them late in that season. This is before I started watching the team, but everybody talked about that late season skid, and it was awful because the Rockets were only paying like $70 million in salary because there was a team full of rookies, and they still had Coach Silas at that point. Like everybody was trying to get Wemby. That year was probably worse than this one, but nobody was reacting, right? So it might be just like, this is what happens in years when you have like, maybe this season is not like, oh, there's generational talent in the draft, but it's a really rich draft, or at least known to be, right? So I'd be curious to see if that was actually true, in terms of like, oh, is this like an unprecedented gap between the tanking and non-tanking teams? And then the last question is, will there be negative unintended consequences? And I already talked about, will teams potentially tank from the 6th seed to get into the play-in now, because not like on purpose, but maybe not try as hard. And I kind of am like, I'm of the mindset that when it comes to tanking, I don't care what happens to the Utah Jazz. I don't watch the Utah Jazz. And I don't know a lot of people who watch the Utah Jazz for fun that aren't living in Salt Lake City, or any people, frankly. They're not even like a Washington Wizards level of like, wow, this team is like kind of fun. They've got something going on here. If they could just like put it together with some of these like young guys, right? It's not even that kind of team. So I don't actually care what's going on with them. What I would like to see is better, more competitive games at the top of the league. Like that's where I would put my focus on if I were the commissioner trying to improve the product. I don't care about the product at the bottom end. Bad teams are bad teams. No, the NFL is not changing their draft rules because the New York Jets are like perpetually terrible, for example, right?
Let's have these
and the
awesome
NFL,
games.
Like they just have it's just straight reverse record order. No? In football?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm pretty sure that that's how it works there. Lots of leagues do this. Someone said that this reminds them of baseball.
Oh yeah, in the chat, someone said that.
Oh, they have way more. They have staggered odds, so their draft lottery looks like ours used to now, like the old system. And actually, like,
but baseball's like you can draft people; they don't come in and like take over the whole league like they do in the NBA.
Right. It's like way more so yeah, of course teams are tanking to try to get the best players. The best players are like really, really important. Way more important in basketball. And maybe that's what it is. It's like, okay, basketball needs special exceptions because teams are gonna like and I'm like, do you need special exceptions or is that just a function of like what your sport is? Um
Yeah.
yeah.
It is funny though because the NBA had kind of been shifting into, this mode where depth was really important and it wasn't about, being top heavy. You still need like an
You
MVP
still
level
need the
player.
guy though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you need the
Yeah.
guy. But
And you probably need a couple guys, even if they're not like the guy.
yeah.
Especially if you're bad and like nobody wants to go to your team because you're bad. I will say I've heard arguments from guys like Matt Moore and Dan Favale that have talked about this. Like the draft is not the like drafting good players is not the only way to build a good team or even the most important factor. I think it's an important factor and it might be the most important factor, but you also need to have, an organizational infrastructure, a good culture, good coaching, all of this stuff as well. And I think that's true, but I also am like, okay, then address those things. Don't take away the or don't try to like uh mitigate or don't try to diminish the ability of untalented teams to get more talented through the draft. Yeah. And this is what they're doing. So
Yeah, they
here's what
made
it
it
is.
harder to keep your drafts, your draft picks with the CBA and like not having enough
Your
money
talented
and
draft picks.
your talented draft picks. Your bad draft picks, you can be overloaded, just like the Nuggets are. Um, so yeah, it's like you can't keep your draft picks.
I mean,
But
I don't know.
now
You
OKC,
can keep your draft picks, even your talented ones, if you operate however it is that Sam Presti's operating and, get Chet and J-Dub to sign a contract without all NBA escalators and keep them at 25% maxes through their prime years instead of going up to
mhm,
30.
yeah, please save us, Knicks. We have such a long time of Thunder and Spurs coming up. There was that article that came out about GMs being like, "Oh, we're not afraid of OKC and the Spurs. We're going to compete. We're not going to give up." And I get that, but I can't wait to see how they plan to deal with this.
I mean, they're obviously not gonna just, like, lay down and die, especially now with
Yeah,
these tanking rules, like, what else are we gonna do? Of course, we're gonna try to compete because it's all we can do.
yeah,
Um, I didn't think that article was actually that interesting. It was just kind of like,
yeah. It was
teams are
pretty.
not going to give up. It's like, okay,
Yeah,
great.
I thought it was just interesting that it existed.
Sports league will
Less what
continue to
was in it.
operate. Yeah, I guess. It's
Yeah.
like interesting that these are conversations that they're having. It's like, are you metaphorically, is your organization like suicidal? No? Okay, good. Like,
Are you giving up?
are you thinking
Yes.
about giving up? They have a hotline. Uh
All right. Well, let's
yeah.
let's talk about the Nuggets.
Let's talk Nuggets. All right. First full segment here. And it might actually end up being just like a short one, but I wanted to have a discussion about if the Nuggets actually need to get more athletic or if they need players with more motor. Now, sometimes those things go together. Sometimes you end up with a player like, like that, like 2023 and even 2024 KCP. He's like super athletic, high motor, and that's what made him a great defender, for example. But I was watching my Golden State Valkyries play the Indiana Fever yesterday. The Valkyries are like, for WNBA standards, a pretty athletic team. But not like great, not like hyper athletic, right? They're actually missing their backup center. I think she should be starting center, but she's gone for the season with a season ending injury, and they play kind of small. But they're not particularly fast. So it's not like a team where you have like, the Indiana Fever have like Kelsey Mitchell, who on the perimeter is like lightning quick, right? But Veronica Burton is not super fast. She's the Valkyrie starting point guard. Um, the um uh yeah, so they had to play small, but they're not particularly fast either. But what they do have is energy in spades, and this is how they defend. They kind of like I've likened the way that they like to defend to not the current Oklahoma City Thunder, but like OKC from like 2 years ago, where they're just kind of flying around all over the place, but without that level of athleticism. Like it's just sheer hustle, grit, and like willpower to always get to that closeout, get to that loose ball, get to that offensive rebound, force a deflection, always playing passing lanes. Like it's just like constant activity, but it's not driven by talent. It's driven by like internal kind of motivation. And they have some talent too. Like I don't want to say they're not a talented team, but this is a team that was an expansion team last year. They're built off of players that other teams left off of their safe lists from the expansion draft, right? Which is what is going to happen potentially next season if these Seattle and Vegas teams for the NBA get bought and the league expands. There will be an expansion draft, and that's how those teams will be built with like basically the leftovers players. And something that interested me about the Valkyries this season is that they brought back more players this season than any other team in free agency. They brought back more players than any other team did, despite like these kind of being like the leftover players of the league initially. And they could have signed a lot more new ones, and they did obviously sign some new players, but they also brought back more than anybody else. And a lot of it, they're like, well, we care about this aspect of character. They care about like they're one of those teams that's like, well, we care about like character, blah blah blah. And Denver talks about that too. Like, oh, we want guys that like have a certain, I don't know, work ethic and want to be in Denver, all this kind of stuff. But I think that the high motor is a really core trait of any player that plays with Golden State, regardless of your athletic ability. Right? It's like we want you out there, and when you're out there, you're giving 110%. And that's what they like put out on the floor yesterday to, get this victory over the Indiana Fever. It's what they did last year as an expansion team to make the WNBA playoffs. I think they were the 7 seed. Maybe they were 8, but they were like on the cusp like all season. It wasn't like they were basically almost never in danger by the end of the season of not making the playoffs, which is insane for a team again of like maybe not like the most talent in the league. Number 1 defense, all this kind of stuff. Anyway, that long preamble is all to say that it made me wonder whether the thing that Denver is lacking is less the athleticism and more the motor, because that sort of intrinsic sort of X factor part of a team, of a roster, seem to be like the thing that is lacking. I get it, GP of St. John. Obviously, the answer is both if you can have it. But there are plenty of athletic players in the NBA that don't have a high motor. We have athletic players on this team that I wouldn't classify as being high motor. We've talked about it with Peyton Watson over the last couple of years. He's very athletic. He's not a player that I'd classify as high motor. Christian Braun, I would have classified him as a rookie, as a high motor player. And like for a third of the season every year, at the end of the year usually, he can be a high motor player, but it's not throughout the season. Like I think starting with his second year, that was pretty evident. I would say probably Bruce in 2023 was a high motor player as well. I already talked about KCP as being one of those. And it's something that we talked about this season with Spencer Jones that really stood out. Like he's athletic in his own way, but he doesn't stand out as an NBA athlete by like NBA standards in terms of like, yes, you'd put him probably as like above average athletic maybe, but not like way above. Like you wouldn't call him like hyper athletic, for example, but you would absolutely put him in like the top maybe 20 or like 10%, maybe even higher of like guys with a motor that are just always going to be like going. Right. And more than the athleticism, I think, is what makes Spencer stand out for the things that fans like him for. Like the athleticism is great, but it's really like the motor and he just never stops going that has, I think, created the moments that people remember for me on the court. And so I just wanted to know what you thought about the idea that Denver needs to screen for motor a lot more than they have. Maybe even more so than any particular athletic traits.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of this overlaps. Like, I think being athletic can lend itself to having a high motor. I think
But there's lots of athletes in the league. Period. Like it's the NBA,
yeah.
right? Like great athletes um that aren't necessarily high motor, right? Um
Yeah. Well, it kind of
yeah.
reminds me of
Like
AG where it's like
would you classify Amin Thompson as a high motor player? I wouldn't necessarily. I think he's a
mm,
great defender. I think he'd be a great addition to this team if he wanted to, if Houston wanted to send him to us. I wouldn't classify him as high motor. I would classify him as a freak athlete for sure.
yeah, like there's athletes who can like have explosive moments, but you're talking about dudes who are just consistently
Always.
like Energizer Bunny.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Energizer Bunny players.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm thinking about just the grind of the season,
Yes.
and would that lend itself, and how sustainable is it to
So let's
play
think
that
about some of
way?
the players, and these can also be freak athletes, but let's think about some of the players around the league who you'd classify as these Energizer Bunnies, right? One that immediately stands out um, is Pascal Siakam, and we've talked about him for this trait on the podcast before. And I'm not saying like Pascal for Denver, but we're just to try to compile a bit of a list of like the kind of player that we're talking about, right? Pascal like doesn't stop going. Like he has that dude has no chill, okay, when it comes to his on-court play. You know, for better or worse, but he's always moving, right? You never look at him and be like, "Wow, he had a bad game because he was kind of invisible or like lazy." Right? You have games where he's like, "Oh my god, why did he take so many turnaround fadeaways from the post?" um, but I kind of liken him a little bit to like KG or Kevin Garnett in terms of that motor. And KG would definitely be a player that I would put on this list if he were still active for sure, right? Um, Other guys that stand out to me are TJ McConnell, where it's just like that guy just like completely Russell Westbrook. And it's one of the reasons that he popped so much here in Denver. Part of it was a big part of it was the athleticism for sure. But the other part of it was like he brought it every single game. That guy again had no chill. So
Hmm.
maybe that is the sort of like defining trait here is like lacking any sense of chill.
Did
Um
do you link not having chill with like also making mistakes?
sure. Absolutely.
Okay.
And sometimes like when you have like that kind of motor, when you're an energizer bunny, like maybe your body is moving faster than your brain can, wisely process that information. And sometimes that goes along with some of the athletic traits too, especially if like in the case of Russ, where it's like he's going so fast he can't stop and then he smokes a layup, right?
Yeah.
Um uh but the other thing that was nice, and like Russ was like incredibly mistake prone, even by the standards of like the guys in this category. But it was really nice watching somebody on the team who like you didn't have to worry if they were like gonna
Mm.
have the energy for it that day.
Yeah. That was the season where we were complaining constantly about effort, and Russ was like
And with
standing
Russ, it
out.
was never like that was never the complaint with Russ, like
Yeah.
literally ever.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I will say, like, the idea of having a higher motor lends itself to even the cultural issues where
Yeah.
Cronky's talking about complacency. Like,
Yeah.
I think, like, when you think of the complacency, everyone's talking about what he's pointing at, and we've already talked about that. But I do think, in general, there does seem to be a lack of urgency with the team, and whether that's Jokic and Murray, I think it's kind of everyone. And we're looking for players who embody that type of urgency and the will to compete. And I was hoping that the Nuggets were conserving energy throughout the season and then could flip a switch. And
They were in
it's always
hibernation.
it's scary to think about needing to flip a switch because ultimately no flip was switch. We almost like reverse flip to switch.
Yeah.
Like we turned on
They
our
got more
like we lost
sleepy.
all of our shooting and
Sleepy. You know what it was? They were like Joe Biden in 2024. Everybody was hoping that once the election kicked into gear, he was going to kind of like turn it back on. And then that debate happened.
Mhm. I
And then
also
it was
think
like, oh no, Sleepy Joe fell asleep.
yeah. Yeah. Also, Russ is a special player. He's older and could still kind of bring that effort, and that's just what he always does. And he's like a freak
Yeah, no, he's a
athlete in
freak.
that
Like,
way.
and there aren't too many guys that are like that level of Energizer Bunny. And there are levels to it. Like I would put Russ probably above even Pascal, but I would probably put Pascal like on that very next tier. But you have guys like a TJ McConnell as well, for example. Jose
Mm,
Alvarado is another one of these. There's a lot of like pesky guards that come to mind because they're the ones that have given Denver the most trouble. And I'm just like thinking of like, oh man, this guy just like never stops. Um, the I'm just thinking on if OKC has any of these guys.
I
They're
mean,
not
Alex
really like
Caruso.
a Caruso. Yeah, it's him. Every freaking possession on both ends of the floor. It's so annoying. Even watching him in the playoffs right now, it's like the dude was bred in a freaking lab.
God, he's like the
I would
best
absolutely classify
role
him as that.
player.
His only like Alex Caruso's limiting factor is like can his body hold up to it, right?
I think that's the
Um,
question for a lot of people. And I did wonder, is
yeah.
it a characteristic? Like, do you see high motors leaning towards youth, or do you feel like it's not a factor in that?
I
It's
mean,
more of like a
Pascal is like
personality.
31. I think it's personality. I think the guys that have high motors have always had high motors for the most part. Because the next question that I had on this is like when I was looking at like Christian Brown's career, for example, because like I said, he seemed like he like jumped off the screen when he was a rookie. Second season, not so much. And a lot of it was like we kind of chalked it up to um well, they're trying to make him like do this like ball handler off the bench thing and he's like figuring things out, but like some games he can be invisible and other like I think part of it is like also a confidence thing and confidence in your role, and I don't think he has that yet, even though like he just finished his 4th year in the NBA. Contrast that to my player comp for him, Josh Hart. That's absolutely an Energizer Bunny as well for the New York Knicks, right? So they've got him and Jose Alvarado now
Yeah.
as dudes that kind of fulfill that archetype. And honestly, I think it helps on an otherwise like rather sleepy team. Like Jalen Brunson is like, your on-court leader. He's a really good, like high like usage soaker guy. Cat's gonna do what Cat's gonna do, but you wouldn't really classify McCall or OG necessarily as like high energy dudes. They're just like good and they execute, right? At their best. That's what they do. So it really helps to have those other guys around. And I think that's what Bruce was for this team in 2023. Like the duo of him and KCP in particular, but then you added some of the energy of like a rookie Christian Brown. But I think that Christian has really mellowed out in that sense. And part of it is, like I said, confidence in your role. And I'm not putting that on coaching. Like, I think that is a thing that Christian needs to figure out internally. Cause right now it's like, the fact that he shot like 30% from 3 this season is worse than the fact that he took so few threes when he was on the floor this season,
Yeah.
for
I mean, he
example.
didn't.
And like that's not like taking threes is not like a motor thing, but it's linked to I think the trait that keeps Christian. I think he overthinks so much that he can't actually like unlock that spark plug part of him that was like really the best part of him as a player for his first year and like the last kind of chunk of his second year before he became a starter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, do you think some of it is positional, like cultural complacency where, Russ wasn't pushing CB? No one's job was necessarily at stake. I mean, I guess P Watt was kind of breathing down CB's neck, but CB was hurt, and then P Watt was hurt when CB came back.
Are you talking about this
So
season? This last
yeah,
season? Yeah, and then he was hurt.
like
He
positional
didn't. He
depth
started the
isn't
season bad though,
adding.
and we have to remember that. Like Christian was not good to start the season, and we commented on it all the time. Now he's probably going to be better next year because he will have had a full season of like recovery and like doing his full like off-season training regimen that he probably wasn't doing last season because he was waiting all summer on that extension that they took forever on, even though they were just going to give him all the money anyway. Really bad process on that front office. Okay. And we probably should have been more. That's something that's on me. I think that we should have been more critical of how long they took on Christian's extension just to give him all the money anyway. Okay. Because that had second and third order consequences on the season. Not necessarily his ankle injury, because that was kind of a freak thing with like the James Harden, but the way that Christian started the season was not looking good either. So it's like I kind of fail to see that like his trajectory would have been substantially better without the ankle injury. It would have been better, but I don't think it would have been that much better. Like I still think he would have had a down year compared to the year prior because of all these factors. So that's part of it. But Bruce also like he kind of like came online in the last part of the regular season, wasn't as good in the playoffs. Unsurprising, like that's just like how his season went. But then like the question becomes like if we bring in high motor players, are they going to stay that way or does Denver actually mellow guys out too much? I actually think KCP is like a good counter to that. So he was here a couple years. His last year here was probably his most his most high motor, like 2020, 23, 24, when everybody was complacent, even though our defense was awesome. Like our defense was awesome because of KCP being like a freak on the perimeter, basically. And he was like always like, if you want to know if like KCP can maintain his motor, watch him against Steph Curry for 4 games in the 23-24 season, for example. And he brought that level like basically every game, which is why you had stats like actually Shea doesn't shoot that well against KCP, even though he like kills everybody else in isolation, for example. Actually, like, yeah, maybe he gets cooked by Brandon Ingram from one game, but he'll completely clamp him the next time they see each other, for example. So I don't think that it's a fruitless endeavor to try to bring in more guys that are high motor. But I think that even if you think that they need athleticism anyway, I think the screen for Denver has to be like, it has to be a hard filter for motor, because even like we've talked about it with Peyton, like if he did this all the time, especially like the stuff on defense, maybe he would have already gotten paid because he would have been the starter instead of Christian. But that was not the case. Like I said, Christian was like the kind of like out the gates, like always moving, also less mistake prone, which I think helped him with the coaches. But I think the motor stuff was huge. Because he was diving for loose balls, doing all of this stuff. Obviously, that didn't hold up. But Peyton was never that player. He would have spurts of it, but it was never like you would never classify him, like I said, as an Energizer bunny. And I'm not saying like they shouldn't have drafted Peyton, this, that, or the other. I'm just saying that the motor should be a bigger part of like the player assessment, even if you want to put it in like, in like the character or whatever traits that we want out of these players, because you've got a more low-key franchise player in Jokic, and depending on whatever they do with Jamal this summer, a more low-key second star as well, right? You need more balance there with these other guys, and it's not just with the athleticism, but also with the consistent energy that they bring. Like these are guys that will bring it regardless of the dudes around them, and that's like I think Russell Westbrook is like a prime example of that we're talking about, right?
Yeah. Snoozer says, I think our rim protection issue puts a cap on how aggressive defenders can be on the perimeter.
In 22-23, the Oklahoma City Thunder lost Chet Holmgren to his Liz Frank foot thing all season. I think they ended up with the highest opponent turnover rate in the league. And they somehow clawed a team that had big Jalen Williams as their only center on the entire roster to the 12th defense just on forcing turnovers. And then having everybody else scramble on the back and try to protect the rim the best they could. They weren't great rim protection, but if you force enough turnovers, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So you think
I don't think that I'm tired of the we can't be aggressive on the perimeter because of our rim protection excuse, because you can't be 30th in the league in opponent turnovers again. I don't want to see that again.
That's part of
in 22-23, Denver was 23rd in this.
Yeah.
But you can't be dead last. It hurts you too much in the possession battle.
It seems like you're hinting at a bigger key that the Nuggets could tap into. Yeah, to just adapt to the NBA, like John, or I can't remember their names because Ben Wallace, we always say John.
Yeah.
Wallace.
John Wallace
was talking about how the league had adapted, and it's time for us to adapt. And the Nuggets looked old and slow, so I definitely get the idea that
they look sleepy.
You're throwing out the word athleticism. You're throwing out size. Those are things that we definitely lack. But I haven't heard.
There are lots of teams that are smaller than Denver. Also, by the way, the whole size thing is yes, that would help, but that's there to patch up another issue, which is that they lack energy to impose their will either on the perimeter or on the interior right now, defensively.
Yeah. I mean, I like the specificity that you're bringing to it.
No, thank you. Okay, I wasn't sure where you're going with that. I'm like, am I being too vague right now?
Well, it's hard to define what exactly is a high motor in the NBA. And it's hard to really you're talking about players and who fits in and who fits out, but the concept of it, which I think will bring urgency to the Nuggets, will make them seem more modern in how they play. I mean, Jokic has always talked about slowing the game down. He's a slower player. He's controlling it. But outside of Jokic, you can have some dudes who are hustling. There's nothing wrong with that. And Jokic, he can throw the ball down the court. He's always looking to play fast, even though he's slow. So it's not like he can't fit in with that. As far as defensive schemes and protecting the rim, that's going to be an issue no matter what. If you have high motor dudes who can constantly rotate, because we're plugging rollers and often rotating out of that, that's going to help you execute schemes. Even Matt Moore had been saying he didn't think the defensive schemes that Dudley was implementing were bad. It was just that the Nuggets weren't executing it well. And that could have been a personnel issue. It was injuries. It was motivation. I don't know what. I kind of just feel like the Nuggets, I think there is something to the fact that they kind of just don't care as much now that they won one. And it sucks to kind of say that, but just the more I think about it, the more I have seen them, and then the more I see these other teams playing, they just don't seem to have the same levity to them when they play. There's not
it's very heavy, right? Yeah.
So that could lend itself.
That. I like that description. So I actually just brought up, this is a very rough proxy for motor, and it's not going to be a 1-to-1, but something that I remember last year when we did our GAG awards show, we had one that was kind of a speed demon award that was based on who ran around the most basically in the league. And I think that Fox and Maxey were at the top of the league. Maybe it wasn't last year, but the year before, because they run around a lot. And Maxey is definitely another player that comes to mind in terms of being high motor, especially on offense. That's true. And you don't have to necessarily, motor doesn't always translate to both ends of the floor, but Maxey is definitely someone where you're just oh man, this kid has so much energy. He's just bouncing all over the place. We got to deal with him. But here are some of the guys that are in like the top 20 of distance traveled per game this season. I went per game because a lot of guys missed a lot of time. Tyrese Maxey leads the league by about 300 feet per game, which is a lot. It's like a whole tenth of a mile. Amen Thompson's actually number 2. So maybe I have to take back some of my words on Amen Thompson. I actually would have classified Asar as somebody who moves around more. It's kind of surprising because Amen Thompson plays on a team that doesn't play that many possessions either. So like I would have expected the feet per game to be on the lower side because Houston plays kind of slow. Like they're not a high possession team. Nikhil Alexander Walker, that tracks, right? Like that matches the eye test as well. Tumani Kamara, okay, kind of fits. Jalen Johnson, all right. He's definitely not a sleepy player either. Part of it with Maxey is that he played so many minutes per game. So let me actually, this doesn't let me do like per 100 possessions. BJ Edgecombe is on here. Jamal's actually on here too. He played almost 36 minutes per game. That's the second most of anybody on this list, actually. So that's part of it as well. But being able to keep up, like that's surprising to me, actually, that Jamal is on this list. Does that surprise you?
Yeah. I don't know. It's like there's different high motors in different like domains of the game, I guess.
He
it's
moves
like
around a lot in the half court, if that makes
yeah.
sense, right? Which I mean is like that's what you're kind of comparing because all guys are getting up and down the court. The question is the differences lie like in what you're doing like within the half court. So I'm kind of surprised to see this, to be honest, that Jamal is here. Even with the season that he had. He wasn't like he had a great season because he was like, you know, running around a lot. Like I said, this is like a really rough proxy. Like some of the other guys here, Scotty Barnes, I wouldn't necessarily classify as high motor either, but he's definitely not low motor, right? I think that that's something that Denver has to try to avoid at all costs. I'm looking at some of the guys that ended up, let's see, let's put a minute filter on this. I just want to see who played over 20 minutes a game and ended up near the bottom of this list. Gary Trent Jr. on the Milwaukee Bucks, Brooke Lopez, Patrick Williams. Okay, so we're not trading for Patrick Williams. All of those trade proposals with the Chicago Bulls are non-starters. Like we cannot have another guy that is not going to be, you know, contributing to like energy on the team. A lot of bigs here, like Isaiah Stewart, Luke Cornett might still be a helpful player, but they're not moving a lot in their particular roles. Surprising to see Malik Monk here, actually, because he's actually a guy that I would have otherwise classified as pretty high motor, especially on offense. Keon Ellis, another one. Surprising. A lot of bigs. It's just a lot of like centers that don't, you know, they have more like static roles at the bottom of this list for sure. But yeah, that's just, you know, some more food for thought. I think that we need to get really, like you said, specific about what it is Denver needs. I should be like athleticism. Otherwise, you end up in a situation where it's like, okay, here's a bunch of like athletes that like don't have particular offensive skills or have the kind of athleticism that is like redundant within your roster. And then it's like, well, we have all this, you know, size and length, which you can classify as like parts of athleticism, but we don't have a lot of speed, for example. But also you need guys that are going to have the energy to actually effectuate their athleticism and put it into practice consistently enough that it makes a high impact on Denver. Right.
Yeah. So it fits in with your speed. Like you wanted speed.
Yeah.
This is basically that, but it's.
Do you know any fast players that are not high motor? Because maybe those things always do go together. Because fast players like to show off their speed. I feel like that's part of it. Is like when you've been told and you know that you're like faster than other guys your entire career, like you kind of always want to like use it. I can't think of one I'm sure they
Mm,
exist, but most
I
like
mean,
guys that
everyone.
are
Yeah,
only fast in bursts and like otherwise you're like, I don't
yeah.
know.
It's hard to really know because
Yeah,
you don't see like them trying to run at full speed all the time. It's always like
right.
shiftiness and explosiveness that pops out.
Yeah.
John Morant, he's really fast.
I would say Jaw is like, I don't know. He's not a low motor player. He's just like had bad attitude seasons. But I actually think for the most part, whenever I watch him play when he's like at full health and there's no like weird behind the scenes like locker room stuff going on with the Grizzlies, which to be fair is a rare occurrence on both fronts. He's a pretty high motor player. So that's another one. Like maybe just speed and motor always go together, and that would kind of play into my agenda. The Denver needs more speed. Um, but I think that that's definitely a trait that Denver should be selecting for a lot more. And not just high motor players, but high motor players that are not going to be afraid to be high motor on a low motor team that Denver kind of is right now, right? Um, but it's hard to tell. Like you can't tell if a guy is going to be able to kind of withstand the sort of mellow culture of Denver until they're here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's something that we're going to have to change quickly. Like, we don't
Yeah.
look more urgent next season. It's going to be very telling. And a lot of that's going to have to do with like the changes that they make, especially with the starters, whether that changes or not. Because if you don't change up the starting unit, like, how much of a difference are you going to see in terms of style of play? You're not bringing in that specific type of player into that unit, but you could get like role players who can kind of bring up the intensity or be the or just bring an attitude of a high motor guy, even off the bench. Something like people have been talking about enforcers and Dylan Brooks and like players like that who maybe not like have the
Toughness.
body, yeah, like just like a tough
Would you
guy.
right?
And
And that's another kind of like kind of intrinsic like X factor thing that people have talked about Denver needing. I think the motor thing is like more important to me personally, but I know a lot of people do care about the like kind of amorphous toughness thing as well. Where do you stand on that? Like how much do you think Denver needs like one versus the other? Because they don't always go together.
like toughness versus this
Motor.
concept you're talking about.
Yeah, energy, I guess you could call it.
I don't know. I mean, toughness does seem kind of it seems a little bit more abstract. Like if you have a high motor player, you can throw them into different schematic, strategic situations, and I
But
think
if
they
you
could
have a
have the
tough
ability to
player that can kind
execute.
of talk everybody up, you can kind of force everybody into like being a little bit higher motor for spurts too.
Yeah, I don't know. I've always been someone who hasn't totally believed in vocal leadership being that effective,
Yeah.
but I'm starting to eat my words because it seems like that was kind of an issue with the
It might
Nuggets.
not be, but when you don't have it, it's loud, if that makes sense,
I
right?
guess.
Yeah.
I mean, we definitely need to be tougher, and I think the Nuggets
Yeah.
have the capability to do it. I think they can do it within themselves. I don't think we need to add like a bunch of players who are more like that. I think they just need to wake up a little bit more, and I think we need more like talent and more. Like I would rather have like a higher motor and different types of players who can bring something than just like a personality. Because I think the Nuggets have people that can already bring that. I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe they'll just fold again, but I think they can like bring up their resiliency.
Um, let's see. Yeah, anything else you wanted to add on this?
Now let's go into the playoffs.
All right, NBA playoff check-in. Last segment here. First part, the New York Knicks are in the finals. They swept the Cleveland Cavaliers. Will, are you surprised at how sad Cleveland went out in this series, especially after like they led for so long in game 1, they came out with so much energy. It felt like okay, they maybe they figured something out about New York, like, even though they lost that game, like, they had something in that first part, and it's just a matter of, like, can James Harden get like a stop on Jalen Brunson, for example. But then it just kind of completely fell apart after that game.
Yeah, that could be one of those things where it's like the devastating loss that occurs that you don't come back from. Like,
Yeah.
it kind of broke them. And I didn't think it had to be that way, but I think that there was something with the Cavs to where, yeah, they just like melted down. Like, it was just like a sad performance. And the Knicks kind of woke up and just rode the momentum. Like, a sweep is crazy in the Eastern Conference, or like not in the Eastern Conference, but in a conference finals, it should be more competitive. But the East is so weird that you have those teams like the Celtics and um who was the first seed? Was it
Detroit.
the in Detroit, who were like younger? Like, that sometimes happens. That used to be the case in the Western Conference Final, where the top teams could have been fraudulent, because it's like the regular season, they're good at winning a bunch of games, but when it comes
Yeah.
down to the playoffs, you're not necessarily going to win. It's different now. Like, the best teams in the West are just like killing people in the playoffs because their
Really good.
seeding is so much easier. Like, if you're the 1 seed, you're playing an 8 seed, it's just so much easier. So I'm not necessarily surprised that the East has teams that just completely melt down.
The Cavs in particular, like, kind of have a history of this also. I agree with you that like game 1 loss was like a psychic trauma. uh they I was thinking about it like as game 2 started, because they actually kept it pretty close in game 2 through half. And then the Knicks ended up pulling away kind of at the end of the game. And then they go back to Cleveland, and like the Cavs went through a series against the Pistons where they were down 0-2. But then they went back home and they were able to kind of rally, but they weren't able to this time. Part of it's like they played 2 7-game series as well, because their first round series also went 7 against the Raptors, right? Um, and they were just like out of gas, both emotionally and physically, and just kind of like let go of it. And then that elimination game was pretty brutal, I will say. They were down, I think 42 at one point.
Yeah, it was almost 50.
Yeah, it was bad. It was bad. Are the Knicks the best 3 seed in NBA history?
I don't know. I don't remember enough 3 seeds to definitively say. If they win the finals and they beat the Spurs or SGA and the Thunder,
Yeah, then they can probably claim that mantle, because both of those teams are super talented.
They're big teams. So that would be a huge credit to the Knicks for vanquishing that opponent.
Yeah, they'd have to actually win the title, because other 3 seeds have won the title. You can't be the best 3 seed if you don't join those ranks.
I think they might just be one of the better like underdog teams, or like one of the better unexpected teams to
definitely unexpected
win a title.
Because what would they won 53 games. I don't think that they met the 40 before 20 rule.
Whoa, did they not? They must have met the other 2 criteria, though.
They definitely had the
top 3 seed, and then
top 3 seed, and the simple rating system. Like their net net rating is good. I can see, but they kind of like came on at the end of the season. I don't think they met the 40 before 20. I could be wrong about that. I'll have to look back at Matt Moore's archives on that one.
Yeah,
Poppin says he sacrificed his salary and his usage to make this work. Yeah, and I thought the Players Association should have investigated that and been like, "Hey, Brunson, like it's not actually great when you do that for the other players, because other teams are going to try to pressure players into doing the same thing, and that's not cool." But it did help the Knicks out, and they were able to get Mikal Bridges and Standard second apron. Obviously, they could have tried to do both, but it would have been difficult to maneuver that particular season. And he sacrificed his usage. Like he went from 32% usage to 29% usage. Great. he's still like the guy on this team, and that was evident from like what they did down the stretch of game 1 of that series, right? I think it'd be pretty cool if the Knicks won the title. Like I said at the top of the show, I think it would break a lot of people's brains about like, well, what is the kind of team that you need? It's like, oh, stars or die. You need to have the best team, and like, yeah, the Knicks are deep ish, but if they won, like, they're not like they're not a hyper athletic team. You've got like Landry Shamet playing real rotation minutes for this team. You got Jordan Clarkson playing playoff minutes for this team. Like, those are not guys that anybody in Denver would have been like excited to like sign or like add at like a deadline, for example. They'd be like, I guess like maybe they help us win like a game in the regular season down the stretch, but you can't play them in a playoff rotation because of defense, etc. That might still be true, by the way, when you get to the NBA finals. And then it's just like, well, okay, like this just doesn't work. The other thing is, you know, the infamous Becky Hammond comments about how Jalen Brunson was too small to be the best player on a championship team.
Yeah, I don't think that's what I'm most curious about.
If anything, he's like too bad of a defender. But it's like also in this team construct that is not, it's got like, they've got like 2.5. Okay, let's say 3, because let's count Josh Hart and Deuce McBride as like one great defender. And Mikal is like pretty good. And then you got OG. So let's call it 3 good defenders and a roster full of like liabilities outside of that. Maybe 4 if you count Mitch, who may or may not actually be available for this series. And we'll talk about that in a bit. But they're like, we're just going all offense and we're just going to try to make every shot, right? Which is kind of like what Denver was hoping their formula would be.
Mm-hmm. If you actually make every shot, you can do it.
Yeah. But instead of not making every single shot. And in fact, missing so many shots. Do you think the Knicks would rather play the injured defending champion Oklahoma City Thunder or the talented but inexperienced and offensively identityless San Antonio Spurs, who also, by the way, have a multi-generational talent in Victor Wembanyama?
This is such a tough question. I go back and forth because I still think Wemby has things he needs to learn offensively. And I could see inexperience kind of getting the best of them and even their other guards. But they're also like riding a wave of momentum that I think is like real. And they might lose this game 7. But if they get into the finals, I don't know that they'd be able to stop it. But maybe like, I don't know. I'm starting to believe less in inexperience these days and just more in like skill. I mean, talent
the Spurs are in the Western Conference Finals in a Game 7 against the defending champions. So, despite having a starting lineup with 4 guys on their rookie scale contracts, I think Julian Champagnie is still on his rookie scale contract. Fox is the only guy on his next deal right now. The Knicks have been the Spurs' kryptonite. I think they've only played twice this season. I just think the playoffs are different when you're talking like maybe if it was like, oh, they had like 3 or 4 matchups and they were in the same conference and we could actually assess this. RX Smart says OKC has too many defenders to put on Brunson and Chet goes off versus the Knicks. OKC owns the Knicks and the Knicks own the Spurs. OG is a very good Wemby defender and Cat draws him out. I mean, they could just put Wemby on OG or like whoever. But the Knicks do play a lot of 5 out and all those guys are at least willing to shoot. I would put him on Mikal personally. That's what I would do. And then I would just let I guess you really wouldn't be able to start like their lack of a power forward would be a real problem in this matchup.
The Spurs,
because like who are you putting on Cat if you put Wemby on Mikal? So that's definitely something in the Knicks' favor, just like on paper with this matchup. I think that yes, the OKC has more guys to put on Brunson, but I also think the Knicks don't have anybody to deal with the like 3 guards, the three-headed snake of perimeter guys that the Spurs have, to be honest. If you're putting OG on Wemby, it's like, okay, McCall, you can put McCall on Castle or Fox or whatever, but then who's going to guard the other one and then Dylan Harper as well, for example. So I think the Spurs, while I said they're kind of like identityless offensively, that's been pretty evident throughout these playoffs. And we're going to talk a little bit about how they've sort of maybe figured some things out about what they want to try to get to against OKC. That's been a really tough series for them offensively. Just like anybody playing the Thunder, but I think like if you're a team that wants to kind of go blow for blow against them, then you have to be able to demonstrate that you can score on a semi-consistent basis. And I don't think that the Spurs had done that throughout most of this series. But I just think you have way more guys that can attack Brunson on the Spurs than OKC, especially with AJ Mitchell out. So that's part of the injury kind of designation. Even if J-Dub is out there, like it's a little bit different because he doesn't have like the speed.
He looks hurt too.
And yeah, he looked terrible in that game yesterday. We'll see. Maybe it was just like rust. Like part of it's like injury. Yeah. Maybe part of it's just rust because he missed a couple games.
It looks like he was struggling. He was like trying to, I think it was like injury related.
Yeah, so I think it's tough, but I would say the Spurs. I do think that OKC is still I would just rather just not play the Thunder. Like I think the Knicks will.
I don't want to deal with the grifting and the flopping and all that.
Yeah, they'll be rooting for San Antonio and then just hoping they can scheme something up to deal with them defensively enough that their offense can shine through. And I think the Knicks are less reliant on like, total shell of himself.
Although a Brunson and SGA grift off in the finals would continue the discourse.
It would feed families. The food would be that dubious food you make on Legend of Zelda when you just throw a bunch of random ingredients into the pot, but the families would be fed. Yeah. I would say they'd rather play the Spurs. I will like the one kind of variable I hadn't actually thought about, but I thought it was an interesting question is so Mitchell Robinson hurt his pinky. Apparently it seemed like probably during practice because it didn't happen in a game. They've been off for almost a week now since sweeping the Cavs. Broke his pinky. He's gotten pinky surgery and plans to return for game 1. He claims he plans to return for game 1 after broken pinky surgery with a cast on. I don't know what that means. If it's just going to be a little splint on his pinky or if it's going to be like he's not playing with a cast on his hand, right? But does your
answer, and he's going to swing it at Wemby and Chet.
Does your answer about who they'd rather play change if Mitchell Robinson won't be available, let's say?
I kind of, at first I was wondering, or I was thinking Spurs might be a worse matchup because they just have less big bodies to be out there, but I don't know that they really need him for Wemby.
Has Chet and iHeart that you got to deal with off the bench too. Not off like iHeart's starting, but he plays a lot in those other minutes. And that was a big problem for Denver. Like AG at 5 was not handling Hartenstein at center like very well at all, right?
Do they have more big bodies that present more of an issue that's harder to cover up without Mitchell Robinson? But if he plays,
and then with the Spurs, you have to deal with like the Cornet minutes haven't been great in the playoffs.
Yeah, like that's not convincing.
So I think the answer is the same. I think the answer is still they'd rather play the Spurs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I just could see the Knicks somehow winning against the Spurs, whereas if it's OKC, I just would be way more shocked.
I can't even imagine it. Yeah.
But who knows?
Especially because Shea would be so much more comfortable. Like a big part of why the Spurs have been able to tie this series up is that because of like the combination of their perimeter defense and Wemby just like completely shutting down the rim. They've been able to force him into quite a number of bad games in this series that I just don't think he'd have against the Knicks. Then again, they probably put OG on him, and it's like, okay, well, let's see what you get. But it's a team effort to try to get that done. And I think having Brunson there to attack, it's just so much easier with San Antonio because they don't have the weak point on the perimeter. Like their weak point is Fox, and he still can be like pretty pesky and he'll like compete. He's definitely like the weakest of their perimeter guys, but it's not. He's still pretty small. Like I think Fox's defense like pretty under, but like then you've got Victor on the backside to clean up anything that happens, right? It's like they don't have that and they won't have that with Mitch. So I think they would rather play the Spurs than play OKC. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the West.
Let's talk about their potential opponents here. So Thunder Spurs currently tied at 3-3. Game 7 is happening tomorrow, right? On Saturday. I want to talk about game 6 because, like I said, it was the first game in the series that San Antonio looked like they could try to generate some relatively comfortable offense in this matchup. I wanted to see here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 7. What did I talk about? Well, if you could remember, the last time we talked about Thunder Spurs with what San Antonio should do offensively.
I was literally thinking during like watching some of the game, I was going to bring it up, and then you brought it up in the notes, obviously. But the empty side actions.
Yes, they need to run more empty side actions. They go middle too often with their pick and rolls, with their handoffs, and usually I prefer that alignment, right? Because it's an easier read for the ball handler. It's harder to guard 3-on-2 because it's an easier read for the ball handler. Almost every pass is like, it's like 1 to 1.5 passes away to get the ball to an open shooter.
Yeah.
And that's
the
like
defense.
Yeah.
Defense can't stunt over on those actions as easy. And they were running actions on the other side of the court in addition to the empty side actions to just like keep them more occupied as well.
Yeah. And they did incorporate movement to some of these empty side actions, either as they were going on or to flow into them so that the defense was already kind of deformed going into, and then you're operating with like an advantage and a half at that point. Vyacheslav says, to be fair, the Spurs were hitting threes like crazy. They were, but not during the portion of the game where it was like non-competitive. Mm-hmm. Right? That was something that I noted during the game too. I'm like, San Antonio, they were up like 5 or 7 at half, and I was like, they should be up more than this. But then that all changed in the third quarter.
Yeah. I did want to say they came out super hot and shot the ball really well, just right out of the gate.
Yeah.
And I just wish the Nuggets could do something like that. Like they just came out and just hit all their shots. And I was just like, well, see what happens when you just like punch first for once.
I just want to see.
And these are young guys who are doing it. And we have vets who just can't shoot.
Yeah, they didn't actually shoot that well in the second half, and their offensive rating was basically the same in both halves of.
Yeah. I mean,
game.
It got closer. They kind of got out to a lead, and then they got a little closer, and then they extended it again.
So yeah, 119 offensive rating in that game. That's the Spurs' best of the series. Grace, do you think Vassell and CB are comparable? Well, one played well. In the playoffs, even though like Vassell has not been efficient, but I'm not really worried about him like freezing with the ball in his hands, or he's actually been a pretty high motor player in these playoffs, by the way. Like his defense has surprised me because he's had like moments just like, oh man, he's totally caught here. But like then he recovers a lot quicker than I thought he would. Like I think he's actually been a better defensive player in the playoffs than he was in the regular season. I thought he was going to be a bigger like weak point for OKC to try to exploit, and it hasn't really panned out that way. So no, I do not think they're comparable. Even though he hasn't been efficient on offense, like that just doesn't matter because of like he's still giving you something on offense, and then like defensively he's been good. And even if the only thing on offense that he's giving you is like, I am some kind of ball handling outlet. Christian is not that right now. Like I said, only like not a crazy shooting game overall, even though the first half they were shooting pretty well, only 36%. And only 21 made free throws. So I wanted to see what was different about the game offensively. I thought Dylan Harper was pretty huge in this game for kind of giving them some positives in the non-Wemby minutes. And this was true in both halves. So even before that like crazy like 20-0 run they went on in the third quarter, that I think was largely because OKC just could not score and the Spurs were getting out in transition and finally actually scoring on those transition opportunities. And J-Dub was also essential to making those non-Wemby minutes positive for San Antonio. He was like barely moving on both ends of the floor. It was pretty rough, actually. Yeah, some Thunder fans were like, Mark, call a damn timeout and just take him off the floor. He cannot be on the floor right now. But let's get back to what actually happened, I think, early in the game to sort of set the tone offensively for San Antonio in a way that I don't think that they've been setting the tone offensively in this series. Even in game one, it was really like, Vic, go impose your will on the interior. That's not really like what happened in this game, to be honest. And actually, I think Wemby needs to figure out a way to do that a little bit more if they're going to have a chance in game 7 on the road. But the Spurs started the game spamming empty corner actions. Just spamming. I'm like, freaking finally. Okay. Well, if you could bring up the Champagne 3 to start first. So here you have is this Castle? No, this is the Vic.
Oh, sorry, that was the Wemby 3.
That's fine. We could just, could you replay the Wemby 3? We could start with that one. So this is the second possession of the game for the Spurs. It's just Castle running empty side pick and roll with Vic, and because of how Dort hugs Vic, Hartenstein has to kind of like fake pick up Castle for a second, and it gives Wemby a chance to pop back out on Dort's like recovery, but Hartenstein's already so far back that Vic gets a wide open look at a 3 that he drains. Okay. So that's like part, it's because Dort is like also this should be called a foul, but Dort is hugging Vic on this roll. It makes it difficult for like Hartenstein to make a decision about who he's going to pick up in that instance. And because it's a pick and pop, now he's like, fine, you're not going to let me roll. I'm going to turn it into a pick and pop, and I'm going to get this wide open look because Hartenstein's dropped so far back because he can't decide who he's supposed to pick up because Dort is like kind of switching onto Wemby, like fake switching before he tries to recover back because he's trying to prevent Wemby's roll at all costs. Right? Okay. Now can we go to the Champagne 3? All right, so I think this is Castle again comes around to get a handoff actually from Vic, but Castle comes off a pin down. He's got Shea on him, and it just flows into an empty side handoff action. Chet tries to guard it 3-on-2 because that's what you can do when you run these empty side actions. And I generally don't like how easy it is for teams to try to guard these. So like you're like, okay, I just need to stop Castle and Wemby. So I'm going to bring it over this third defender, leaves Julian Champagne basically wide open because Dort is like, well, I have to play 2 guys now because Jared McCain is also for some reason pinching in. I don't know why he's doing that.
They were really over.
I don't know what they basically tried to guard it 4-on-2.
Yeah. I was kind of surprised with how the Thunder looked packing the paint and kind of daring daring the Spurs to make threes coming out of the gate, and there was just so many open threes. And I was like, what are the Thunder doing? They're supposed to be these great defenders, but they were like really, it was almost like they didn't believe that
overplaying.
the Spurs could shoot.
And also, like, Jared McCain, what are you going to do as the last line of defense there? Go back over to your man in the corner. What are you doing? Vyacheslav, this semi-help is really useful when, honestly, I wouldn't have brought Chet over. I would have brought Dort over because that's a harder pass to make to, who else was on the floor? It was Castle, Wemby, Champagny, and Fox. Okay, so yeah, if you could play this again, you've got Dort on Fox instead of Chet pinching in. It's difficult because like the action comes off of movement, and Dort doesn't actually have time to pinch into the paint. But in an ideal world, if this was just a static pick and roll, Dort would have been the one to pinch in. Chet kind of stays on Champagny, and then it's like, well, this is kind of a difficult passing angle to Fox. The reads are harder in this alignment than if it was spread pick and roll and like everybody is like 1 to 1.5 pass away. Fox is kind of 2 passes away, but you can't get it to him directly, right? Or you can't get it to the guy that'll get it to him. In this case, Julian Champagny is 1 pass away because of how the Thunder decided to bring in that third defender. Okay. And it's also helpful when you're going against a ball handler that has tunnel vision, which, to be fair, Stephon Castle has often had and even had in times in this game, and won't make that easy 1 pass away pass. So you would pinch in because you're like, there's literally no risk of him passing it to that open man. In this case, he did, and Champagny punished them for it. But it happened again because if you could just roll that clip one more time. Sorry, Will. They are trying to play, I think, just straight drop on this handoff on Wemby. So Hartenstein's completely back. Shea has recovered to Castle. Honestly, I think this was not even like anything special that the Spurs did or anything special about how they're guarding Wemby. It's just like OKC like way overplaying their hand. Shea gets too far back on Castle's hip. And actually, you could say Hartenstein's guarding Wemby there the way that a lot of teams guard Jokic on his like slow rolls or pops, where that lane was going to be wide open to the rim. So Chet's trying to cut that off because Shea is on the backside of Castle and can't recover to the front of him. Otherwise, that would have been a layup. Right?
Yeah. They're really overplaying, like they were trying to make others beat them. And they basically did.
Let's go to one where Castle did get a layup. So another empty corner action here. Clear out. Castle and Wemby. Fox is is this the one from last time? No. This is the one I mean.
It looks almost the exact same.
So
Chet is a little bit more in position to contest if he was to pass, but here we go.
Yep.
No one kind of recovered on him.
And that's what happens when Chet doesn't pinch all the way in.
Yeah.
And this was like a nice honestly, like if it were me, I would have like considered calling that a carry, but like Castle is learning hesitation moves. That's great.
Yeah, he had a lot of deceleration type moves in the paint too. And yeah, Shea was sticking heavily to Wemby right there.
Yes.
He didn't ever try to recover.
The whole point is stop Wemby's roll. Stop Wemby's roll. And again, I would have had Dort be the one to pinch in there or something. Or like just have Dort like rotate over to the 1 pass away guy. And try to force Castle to make that more difficult pass to Fox kind of in traffic.
Yeah, like Dort was pretty far down in there, but he just didn't do anything. So it was like, why are you all the way down there?
Yeah. It didn't matter because they ended up getting the layup anyway. I don't know. All right, let's see. Let's go to the Vassell 3. So this one was not empty corner action. They ran like a double drag for Harper involving SGA. A lot of these actions involving SGA was another theme of this game, trying to tire him out as much as possible. This is with Cornette on the floor. And
you got a Dort
this
flop
was the one where
so
Dort
nice.
flopped. This was the one that was circulating yesterday. I didn't even realize that.
They flop on every screen.
Yep. Especially
even hit the ball handler on the flop.
love the no call there. Dort, if he hadn't flopped, could have recovered to Vassell, but yeah, was on the ground. So
you gotta make OKC pay if you have an open look from 3.
yeah.
Thankfully, they were doing that.
They shot really well from above the break, as some people pointed out. Let's see. Okay, let's go into the Vic ISO step back. So this one ended up in, like I said, an ISO step back 3. This is okay, off a jump ball situation. But Champagny gets the ball. Everybody else clears out and lets Vic and Julian kind of run an inverted situation here. And again, Hartenstein dropping all the way back on Vic, trying to run inverted. He doesn't drop all the way back, but he just got got by that move from Vic. And this is a tough shot that you absolutely live with if you're OKC and you're just like, all right, fine, whatever.
A rejected screen to then a step back 3 is not something you expect from a center, of course.
Yeah.
So kudos to Wemby for pulling that one.
7.5 foot guy. No.
Yeah, that was wild. I mean, he wasn't expecting that, but he created separation for sure.
Have you seen Wemby play in person yet? Have you been to a Spurs game?
No.
Yeah, I need to do that. I need to do that next time he's in the Bay.
I'll have to think of some way to troll him.
Another one here. So this is not empty side action, just like kind of some impressive plays from Victor here. Transition drive on Chet. And you just like, we need more of this. Because like I said, I don't think that he really imposed his will in the interior as much in this game as he did in, say, game 1. So I actually think OKC has done a pretty good job of guarding him. And one of the ways that he can sort of counter that is like take advantage of every transition opportunity you can to try to deal with a not completely set defense or not completely set defender in Chet here. Just like, I almost feel bad for him that this dude is fighting for his life every game against Wemby. I said almost.
Yeah. I'm kind of surprised that they weren't like digging down and really trying to swipe at the ball when he's like attacking like that, but maybe he's just too fast.
They did. Like they got some strips too. Like, it's hard to time the length with him. So sometimes I actually am like, you gotta like cool it with these rip through moves because I think OKC gets pretty close on a lot of these, to be honest. But the other thing is like his strides are like really long. So you're like, oh, I dug down and I forced him to pick up the ball from the free throw line. And it's like one more step for him to turn that into a layup, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. The next one is this driving floater. And I was like, oh my gosh. He's adding, this is off an offensive rebound, pump fake, drive in, SGA steps up. And
God.
I mean, that's almost a layup for him because he's so tall.
I hate to say it, but people are not closing out like this and jumping like that on Jokic.
Yeah, because he doesn't want to take the 3 and they know that. Whereas Vic wants to take that 3.
I know.
I mean, not this one because he was literally pump faking, but he takes the 3s. Like he'll do that. Jokic doesn't want to. And he'll like half pump fake and then be like, dang, now I got a jab step because they didn't actually fall for my pump fake. Is that in the other? Yeah, they're not going to close that. You're not going to close out that way on it. Yeah, if Vic gets a floater consistently, I hate to say it, but it's over.
Yeah, I wonder.
League done. League finished. League scared.
I think he could. I mean, he's got touch. He does. And he's tall, so you can see right into the rim. It's like, how hard can it be?
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. So we got this Harper layup.
Yeah, and then the last one is this Harper layup. So double drag that kind of like it turns into basically like a little handoff with Wemby rolling on an empty side again. And this is a tough one because they're guarding this like 4-on-2 You got Carter Bryant wide open, Fox wide open, and now Vassell is wide open because Jared McCain is just like, oh shoot, who am I guarding? I don't know. And Harper
Yeah,
still
how
goes
did
all
he
the way down to
still
the rim,
score
by the
that?
way. Like, that was crazy.
They literally have all their whole team down in the paint trying to stop that, and
Yeah.
still almost like they were more concerned about Wemby
Yep.
and just let him through. And that would
We
have
should
been a
play that one
tough
again,
pass.
actually. Just like play it in real time. I just want to see um like the relative attention that Wemby versus Harper is getting on it. Like, yeah, Hardenside's dropping all the way back. It's still tough but it's like Jared McCain on your backside. You can make that, and he did make it.
Yeah, just
Hardenstein
not good
tries
enough
to
from
contest at the
Hartenstein.
last second. Like, that's a tough finish still, but nobody else is getting that opportunity. Um,
I think OKC
yeah.
did leave some meat on the bone defensively that they'll step up in this game 7, but
Yeah, so that's the other thing I wanted to talk about. In that third quarter when everything like the game blew wide open. I actually thought like to start the quarter, like, okay, OKC is like, let's try to stabilize here. Or we already stabilized before half. Let's try to like make some ground. And they started to, and it was kind of like, okay, San Antonio offense, don't stagnate again. But then like OKC's transition defense just completely fell apart.
yeah,
The
I think
Spurs had 12 fast break points just in the third quarter alone. And
yeah,
then
they kind of
the
gave
game
up.
was over. Yeah.
They were like, "Let's just go back home.
Yeah.
We'll take game 7."
Which they might,
Have
which they probably will.
the Spurs won game 1 in OKC. Was it the only other one they
Yeah.
won out there?
Yeah. OKC wins their home games.
Yeah. So it's going to take a very good game from the Spurs, very disciplined game, and they're going to have to be hitting shots basically like they did in game 6.
Yeah.
Cornet minute scares me, says Vyacheslav.
Yeah. That's the other reason the Cornet minutes were so positive. Like Harper helped a lot um in those instances, but the other thing was like OKC was just like allowing runouts and like open threes in transition, not matching up. It was really bad. It was actually like uncharacteristically sloppy. I hadn't seen them look like that since game 6 against the Pacers in the finals last year. Um and that was the first time I'd ever seen OKC get blown out in a playoff game. So,
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
though to be fair, like I said, the Cornet minutes, they started to be better in the first half of this game, like when the game was still competitive. Um, maybe the Spurs have figured something out. And I think if they end up with the Cornet minutes like even or close to a draw, like this could be a really good game down the stretch, and it'll give San Antonio a stretch. But I just don't trust that to happen because the Thunder are going to be playing so hard, not only to like not lose on their home court but because it's like this is the game that takes you to the NBA Finals. Like it's just different once you get to the or any conference finals, and it's like the finals are right there, like you can taste it, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Nothing left.
yeah.
Yeah. It could be a game where SGA gets 40 points and 18 free throws, you know?
Yeah.
I would say Wemby is playing better than SGA right now.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So some
So that
people like
can lend itself
he
to a
I
game
will
7.
say some people that have tried to kind of make the comparison between the two um have said like game 5 was when Wemby's only bad game. He was a complete non-factor on both ends of the floor in that game. I actually think he was a complete non-factor on both ends in game 2 or game 3 as well. That was when I started seeing I was getting kind of worried about the Spurs in this series in game 3 because I was like, "Oh, the game 1 and 2 stuff where the Thunder have to like worry about Vic like kind of destroying them on the interior or like being this like force at the rim that completely stalls their offense was just not present in game 3 either. Um Obviously bounced back in game 4, but then game 5 happened. And I do think he had two like solidly like bottom tier games in this series. Shea, I think he's had been better than Shea in this series. But I actually think that both stars have like relatively underperformed if you look at the aggregate.
Mhm.
Um For him, it's just like he can be carried by good performances from Western Conference Finals MVP. If I had a ballot in OKC one, Alex Caruso on both ends of the floor, or no AJ Mitchell now, and J Dub is looking how he's looking. So who kind of comes along for the ride in another game? Like, that's a question for the Thunder to answer. RX Smart says, do you think Wemby is having a better series versus OKC than Jokic did? And why is he doing better or worse? Okay. I think Wemby to this point is having a slightly better series, but it'd be pretty even, because similar to how Wemby had like non-factor games in games, like he was good in game 2, but they lost, and obviously great in game 1. Game 3 and 5, Jokic also had non-factor games in or versus OKC. Like, he was really rough for like 3 full games of that series, and that's really tough. Defensively, I will say like the ceiling with Jokic was way higher. Like his game 1 like kept them in a game they had literally no business being in against OKC, and then that's when like he kind of like slid from there until he recovered at the end of the series. I don't know. Vic's had some really high, like surprisingly high highs offensively in this series as well, in ways I didn't really necessarily expect, because the Thunder have Chet and like all these wings that I thought could really bother him. And it kind of makes me think like, I don't actually know like what Vic would look against Denver in a playoff series offensively. Like, we think we can guard him because of regular season matchups, but I don't know. Is our personnel is our personnel for him really much better than OKC's personnel for him? I don't know, right? But he's had some pretty high highs. I think the overall offensive impact I would still give to Jokic, but like the non-factor games are tough. The non-factor games are tough. But I think it's closer than maybe people would care to admit. But not because of Jokic. Although, like I said, the non-factor games are tough, but Vic had his own. But because of how high Vic's highs have been in this series, like in a surprising way. Even given his talent level, like, yeah.
I think it's just hard to compare to, and like Jokic's, I can't remember, was Jokic shooting well from 3 versus OKC?
Not for the games that he wasn't, if that makes sense. I would say no, because he shot well in game 1, and I would say games maybe 5 and 6. Obviously didn't do anything in game 7, and then he had the 2, 3, and 4 that were bad. So like overall, I would say no.
I also think teams are getting they're used to the OKC formula. Then they're expecting it. Whereas it was kind of like on the rise when we were playing them, and fronting Jokic and grabbing him. And the Nuggets have just been easier to scheme for, and you just shut down Jokic. There's less to kind of go to, and Jamal wasn't playing as well in that postseason. Aaron Gordon had the hamstring, so I mean, I do think some of it is team dependent. Like, Wemby has other guys stepping up against OKC that the Nuggets just didn't really have.
Yeah. I think, but the thing is, like, OKC was so much worse. I think OKC was worse offensively against Denver than they have been against the Spurs. The numbers won't show it, but in terms of like they couldn't make shots, whereas they're making shots against San Antonio in this series. They didn't in like game 6, but I think that they've looked way more comfortable offensively in this series than they did against Denver in any game. Any game in that series, honestly, except maybe game 7, right? Yeah. So, and a lot of that is Vic. Or sorry, that's a lot, like, they're making shots, but they're not crossing into the interior, right? It's just like their process is good, and they're still generating open threes and making them at a decent clip, which is why they're tied in this series instead of eliminated now. Salazari says, gotta stop Caruso. Yes. If Alex Caruso was not on the Thunder, Denver would have won that series, which is insane because Denver was a hot freaking mess. But he was, like I said, bred in a lab to get the Thunder to the NBA Finals. So, all right. That about does it. Do you have any predictions for Game 7? Hopes, dreams, fears? Nobody get
I don't
injured.
know.
We don't want a Tyrese Halliburton.
I could see the Spurs having a lead and blowing it in the fourth quarter.
I think they've led every first quarter of the series. Except maybe Game 5. I need to check that. But I think they've led early. And then it's like the Cornet minutes come and then they can't recover the momentum kind of thing.
I just wonder how they would handle that. Like, we're up. Just need to get to the last. Like, just grind this game out. Don't let them back in. And whether they'll be able to keep their foot on the gas and show that they can do that.
It's a good question. And I kind of wondered that last night with Game 6. And in was it Game 6 against the Wolves? Did they go 6 against the Wolves too? But they keep San Antonio is a team that keeps their foots on people's necks. Like, they don't really let up once they might blow a lead, but it's not because they let up. It's like in Game 1, I would say they blew a lead because it went to overtime despite San Antonio leading by 8 to 12 points for most of the game. But because the Thunder went small, started to out execute, started making shots, frankly, at the end of the game, right? It wasn't because San Antonio let their foot off the gas. Yeah, so I wouldn't say it would be a let up psychological thing. I don't even think it would be necessarily about playing tight. I think they're really excited. They seem like a very excited young team. And it's already I don't know, we made the Western Conference Finals. That was really exciting. I don't know how much more exciting making the finals is for a team in their position. I do think a more experienced team might actually play tighter because it's okay, conference finals, whatever. We want to make it to the NBA Finals. They know what that means. I don't think a team as young as the Spurs actually knows what that means, and that might actually play in their favor, right?
That's true. The delusional.
Yeah, it's of course we're gonna go. Of course we're trying to make the finals.
Yeah, there's no reason to doubt it.
I will say somebody who's kind of been not an X factor per se, but you watch him in games 4 and 6, and both of those games were blowouts, to be fair. But I feel like he made some really, sorry, I should say his name, Harrison Barnes, made some really timely buckets and timely plays. He was diving for loose balls, diving out of bounds to try to save balls from going out of bounds and saving them back to the team. Some of them not even winning some of these contested loose ball battles, but I'm what is the 34-year-old doing in this situation right now? I feel like he wants to go back to the finals. I feel like he knows what that means. And yet it's not that the other players not knowing makes them less likely to dive for loose balls, but it definitely stood out that the 34-year-old was also getting in the mix for some of these. And they've got a great infrastructure around the guys over there to kind of keep everybody level-headed, but also keep their energy up. I know Castle was talking about how Greg Popovich came into the locker room after Game 3 and yelled at everybody and whatever it was. And then they came out with their hair on fire in Game 4, and maybe that wasn't just pop, but also hey, we don't want to go down 3-1. But they did play with a lot of verve in that game for sure.
Do you think none of these teams would admit to this because you could never say it, but do you think they're going to treat it like the NBA Finals? Whoever wins this game is oh, we just got to get past this team and we're definitely going to win. We're not that afraid of the Knicks. Or do you think they're I know that they're going to be hey, don't get ahead of yourself. Don't underestimate your opponent going to the finals.
You said if either of the teams?
Yeah.
I would have said OKC if anybody was going to have that mindset. OKC would. I don't think OKC has that mindset. I think they're kind of I think their mindset is get to the finals and we'll deal with it when we get there. And I think they understand the situation that they're in with their injuries. It's not going to be an easy battle.
Yeah.
The Spurs, I don't think are getting too far ahead of themselves, to be honest with you. I think they're just like, take care of what's in front of us, especially because Wemby hates the Thunder so much. Right, like, he's like, this might be his Super Bowl, to be honest.
Yeah.
He might hate the Thunder more than anybody on NBA Twitter, to be honest.
Yeah, I guess that's the one thing about Wemby I appreciate. No matter who wins, though,
my enemies.
Yeah, I will enjoy one of those teams losing, though. Like, as much as I'd be like, oh, OKC in the finals again, that sucks. I'll be like,
if OKC made the finals, I would enjoy them losing. If the Spurs made the finals, I would enjoy the Knicks winning. I think that would be. I don't really care. I don't really care as much about San Antonio right now. We haven't played them, so.
I just cannot. I'm just really do not like Wemby, but yeah,
it's fair. It's like, all right, I accept your hatred. I appreciate him like making himself. He's like fully accepting the like face of the league stuff. Like, he's playing into like the kayfabe and like all of that. Should have done that post-game presser. And I don't mean like, oh, like golden boy, although he kind of plays into like that part too. But he also is like, oh, you want to hate me? Like, hate me kind of thing also, which is like fun to watch. Yeah. Anyway. All right, you guys are sick freaks for making it this far into this discussion about not your favorite team, but we appreciate everybody who's hanging out with us in this extended off season for the Denver Nuggets. If you like our content, please remember to click the like button, click the subscribe button, as well as the notification bell. Leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform and follow us on socials. I'm so glad to have my account back. And yeah, fun stuff. I feel like I've been like even more twittering recently than I was even in like the last couple of weeks.
The opposite. I've been like absent.
I think it's fun being able to just say stuff and it's like not, there are no stakes to it. Like, this has nothing to do with my team. It's kind of like how I felt watching the Golden State Valkyries last night, even though like they are my team, but it's like way less stressful watching a team that has like no expectations. And you're just like, I'm happy to watch you guys play with energy and like try to win a game. It would be great if the Nuggets could bring back that that feeling in me as well.
The outro always remember song, I have to restart the outro music.
Oh no!
For the first time.
Follow us on socials, and always remember that winning is fun and losing sucks. So hopefully, the Knicks win and the Thunder lose in some way, either now or in the finals.